made my day.
Alright, what's going on everyone? My name is Deontay, but you can call me Emperor. As you can see, we have a basic gameplay guide for Narmaya today, which is actually my first main when I picked up this game in early access on the PS5 2 years ago. So what I'll be going over is the current loadout I have on her. Then I'll go over her basic gameplay on the practice dummy. Then we'll go over the skills and what I recommend using on her. Afterwards, I'll go over my recommended sigils along with my build being used on the practice dummy once again. And then finally, I'll use her on a boss, which will be the fire dragon. So let's go ahead and get this started. So I'll go ahead and quickly go down for my sigils right quick for you guys. And then this is my overmastery on her, which both her current sigil setup and her overmastery is the exact same on that video I made on her about a year ago. And as usual, I'll take off all my sigils and switch out my weapon so I can go over how her gameplay works. So with Narmaya, as you can see, we have this butterfly right beside us, and the amount of butterflies she has during her combos enhances her damage essentially. How you gain these butterflies to cap them out at 6, you essentially use her combo finishers, which I'll be going over in a second, and then her link attacks. But before we do that, we have 2 stances. Currently we're in the Dawnfly stance, and then if we press the heavy button, we go into the free flutter stance.
The final song.
To explain them as simply as I can, the Dawnfly stance is more heavy attack base, and free flutter is extremely fast for damage, pretty much. Heavy damage, fast damage. I think that's the most simple way to explain those stances. And her attacks change entirely based off of her stance as well. So first we'll be going over her Dawnfly stance and how her basic combos look. As you'll see, it's a bit slow, but it does heavy damage. And that'll be one of the basic combos. Now, if we switch to the free flutter stance, it's a little bit more different because it's going to be a lot more faster. And then an additional thing with the Dawnfly stance is you can actually hold the light attack and you can do this little charge right here. But you can see it's kind of slow. But once you release it, that happens. However, that charge can be a lot faster if you simply do a light attack 3 times and then charge, or you're in the middle of using a skill. So it will look like this. And then it's a lot faster. For both the Dawnfly and free flutter stance, I do get combo finishers towards the end of those. And what those combo finishers do, 1, they pretty much deal a lot of damage, and then 2, they automatically switch into the other stance. So for the Dawnfly,
The butterfly scatter, swarm.
and then they'll instantly take you to the free flutter. And then the free flutter is a little bit easier because all you do is do the entire basic combo, and then you go into Dawnfly, like so. Now we have all these butterflies, but I don't exactly have skills to utilize them. So let's go ahead and go over those right quick. So for Narmaya, she has 5 damage skills and 3 buff skills. So going over this first one, as you can see, it is a really fast lunge. And as I said earlier in the video, that they do change based off the amount of butterflies you have. And most of the time, you're likely going to have all 6 anyways. Might sound obvious, but I definitely recommend using this skill a lot for bosses. That certain enemies like Behemoth, for example, moves around too much. And it's very easy to chase down enemies with this skill. And I should also mention pretty much all these damage skills chain into a finisher. So more than likely I end up using at least 3 damage skills and I might have 1 buff skill. Anyways, back to the damage skills. We also have this one right here. Pretty much a heavy attack for a damage skill. And just like how the Dawnfly charge attack is, you can make this a lot faster. And how you make this faster is just simply your butterfly count. So I heavily recommend this skill, especially once you actually break an enemy. We have this counter skill, Apex and Nothingness. I really don't see this skill being used a lot. From all of my playtime on this game, I really don't see this skill being used a lot in endgame. It does act as a counter and then you debuff the enemy once you actually hit them. However, for this video, we will not be using this whatsoever. And then same thing for Crescent Moon. I really don't use the skill at all, simply because it makes me jump all the way back, which I kind of don't want on Narmaya since I want to be as close as possible pretty much. We also have this skill right here, Transient. And this is one of the skills that changes a lot based on your stance. It doesn't show in the preview, it only shows the Dawnfly stance, but in the Free Flutter stance, it changes a lot. And it does like a huge chunk of damage on the Free Flutter from what I can tell. Now for the buff skills, we have Dance to the Pink Petals. I'll go ahead and say that I would at least recommend 1 buff skill when you play Narmaya. And that buff skill depends on your current setup and where you're at in the game. So like Dance to Pink Petals, I absolutely recommend this like for early game going towards end game, because it does give you an insane attack boost, and then you do get soul material damage. Of course you get Stout Heart with this too and butterflies, but the soul material damage is really important. Now for Dance to Blue Petals, you also gain 3 butterflies from this, but you also grant yourself a defensive boost by a whole 40%. And on top of that, you restore HP. This I highly recommend for endgame players who want a little bit more survivability, as that defensive boost does help out a lot, just in case if you actually manage to get hit in combat. Now, Utter Devotion is a little bit more different in my opinion, because I feel like this buff right here isn't really tied towards boss fighting. I feel like this is more for like ad clear, if that makes sense. You do inflict the enemies with a defensive down by 25%, which is why I kind of recommend this for ad clearing, since there will more than likely be somebody else on your team that can debuff the boss, if you're being honest. So this is more so for the other type of missions in this game, not for boss clearing. Now, going over my actual build, I want to quickly go down to my Warpath Sigil. So I really wanted to talk about this because this is kind of like a hit or miss depending on your playstyle and what you're going for on your team. I personally wouldn't recommend using the Sigil at all if your team is trying to delay the boss's actions by using SBAs one after another, because the SBA gain going down by a whole 50% is a little bit too low. So essentially, if you're finding somebody like Lucilius, pretty much, or any of the end game bosses that are going to be coming in July, only if you're going towards, you know, using SBAs a lot. Other than that, if you're going strictly for damage, then yes, this is an absolute must. And then the same thing could be said for the Grace and Valor. As you can see for Valor right here, you had the 50-50 chance to not consume your butterflies when you use a skill. It's essentially gambling, but you use a fair amount of your skills pretty damn quickly when you play Narmaya anyways. On top of that, you're also gaining a lot of butterflies and your combo finishers, and just doing your basic combos and then your link attacks. And Grace is also another really important one, because she pretty much gains an additional butterfly from those actions. Now, for my uplift, this is a little bit more different, because normally I wouldn't even bother using this, but I'm only using this so I can sort of offset the Warpath Sigil, because that does decrease my SBA gain by 50%. So I try to offset it with using Uplift. If you don't have the Warpath, I would consider using Nimble Onslaught so you can stay in combat a little bit longer, because what Nimble Onslaught does is when you do your perfect dodge, it allows you to keep your invincibility a little bit longer. So I would consider using Nimble Onslaught over uplift if you don't have Warpath equipped, because Narmaya gains SBA just fine when she doesn't have a Warpath on anyways. Now, I will say, Cascade is very important on her, and that is absolutely because of free flutter stance. You saw earlier that free flutter stance does a lot of attacking pretty fast, so you can kind of see why Cascade is pretty important, since it shortens the cooldown based on when you actually hit them, as opposed to quick cooldown up here. It's just like based off of time in general. And then obviously Tyranny, you know, this reduces your HP, but it gives you a really high boost in damage, which is allowing me to be at 27,000 damage on her, which could be much higher if I actually maxed out Tyranny, but it's not worth it for exchanging any other sigils that I already have on her. And then stamina is just an attack boost based on how much HP you actually have. So the more HP you actually have on you is essentially giving you more damage. So as long as you're not losing HP in battle as often, you'll be fine with this on. And I highly recommend both stamina and tyranny on Narmaya. And the same thing can be said for skilled assault, obviously, because she is highly oriented around her damage skills. So skilled assault boosts the power of those damage skills. And this is also what I use on Narmaya typically in endgame. So like I said earlier, 3 damage skills and 1 buff. Now, let's go ahead and use this on a practice dummy, and then we'll get to that boss. Now, most of the time, if it's not a boss that's attacking immediately, what I usually do is I just go in with my lunge skill, and then I just combo off of that. So, like this.
Foam on the sea, the pond break, flow, scatter. You cannot escape fate. You're open. Evanescence. The clouds scatter. I see all. Rain on the hills. Succumb. The pond. Scatter. Scatter. I see all. To breathe. There is no light. The clouds break. Come, my friends. Evanescence. Float. I see all. The butterfly. Scatter. I see all. Foam on the sea. The pond. Scatter.
And you can see with the warpath on, my SBA gain is pretty damn slow on her.
You're open. Swift as thought. Certain as death. Break. Flow. Scatter.
And all I'm doing is just switching around rapidly.
The pond. Scatter. I see all. Succumb. Without darkness. We awake. The butterfly. Break. Come. Scatter. Fall. You're open. Rain on the hills. The pond. Scatter. Float. I see all. The clouds. You're open. Decay. Scatter. Succumb. Wind in the fields. The butter break. Float. Succumb. To breathe. We awake. The clouds scatter. Come scatter. Enough. I see all. One stroke. 1,000 deaths.
But yeah, the warpath does make it take a very long time to build up her SBA, which is only an issue if you're obviously trying to stun the boss a lot so he doesn't make any actions, or you know, to skip a whole mechanic, because you can do that with SBAs for some reason. All we have left is to fight this boss, so let's go ahead and get to it. We meet again, buddy. Alright, let's get this started.
The first step decides the course of battle. Rain on the hills. The pond break. You're open. Swift as thought. Dance
Doing a
of
lot
the
of stuff
cliff
at me already.
Wind in the fields. Succumb.
Had a feeling that would hit me.
In a flash. The butterfly is scattered to the heavens. Rain on the hills. Scatter. Succumb. The clouds. I see all.
I tried to get that on him before he actually went to his ability. But I suppose that'll suffice for now. Now we're going to use this skill right after. Because it does a lot to his overdrive meter.
You're open. Wind in the fields. Quickly. The butterfly. Break. Succumb.
And as I mentioned, using Cessna here is really, really good.
Scatter.
Effective.
I see all. The cloud. Evanescence. The butterfly. Scatter. The fire. Rain on the hills. Succumb. Let's not do anything rash. You're open.
Let me get. There we go.
Beauty is transient.
Oops.
Wind in the field. Come, my friend. The pond scatter. You're open. Rain on the hill. Scatter. I see all. Without darkness.
That was pretty cheeky, you know? He went back the last second. Not smart. I'll admit.
Wind in the field. The cloud war demands blood.
And he's dead. That should be the end of today's video. I've probably mentioned it in one of my previous videos already, but most of these builds that I'm using are going to change once the expansion drops in July. Because I believe I've already mentioned in my closed beta video that I did see a lot of changes to certain characters and a whole bunch of rumors and whatnot. So I might change around my sigils a lot. That aside, do expect to see Zeta as well sometime during this week. Anyways, I'll catch you all later.